The video you're about to watch is from the Brand Podcast Summit, brought to you by Lower Street. We're a podcast agency for brands. This was a 2-day event that brought together some massive companies like the New York Times, LA Times, Morgan Stanley, Atlassian, REI, YouTube, Spotify, a ton of companies, all gathered to talk about what has worked for them in podcasting and not worked for them over the last 12 months. And looking forward, what are they planning and looking at over the next 12 months? So if you're a marketer looking at podcasting this year, or you have a podcast and you're looking to improve on it or get more out of it, I think you're going to find a ton of value here. And so for more videos just like this one, head over to lowerstreet.co/events. And you'll also find information there about future conferences and summits we have coming up. So head over to lowerstreet.co/events.
The Brand Podcast Summit.
We're kicking off this Brand Podcast Summit in the best possible way. Do you guys remember Extreme Makeover Home Edition? Well, this is Extreme Makeover Podcast Edition. My name's Andrew Ganem. I'm head of podcast success here at Lower Street, and I'm going to be your Ty Pennington for the duration of this flight. We've got someone, you just had a sneak peek, who's doing incredible work in their community and have created a podcast, but it isn't quite as awesome as they are. And so we're here to help take their podcast to the next level. So just a little bit about this session. It's going to be a little bit different than the rest you'll see today. We're going to be doing a very condensed version of the audit process that we do at Lower Street, just to give you a sense of our what we look for when we're looking to improve a podcast. Normally, we have like between 4 and 6 weeks to do this, and it's very collaborative, very iterative. But today we only have 45 minutes, maybe less. So there won't be a Q&A for this session in particular. But we hope it's really informative and really gives you an insight into our process. So, enough for me. Let's introduce the star of our show today, Olivia Bussey. Welcome, Olivia.
Hi, everybody. I'm just coming through via video. I don't know if you can see me yet, but
I can see you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for the intro, Andrew. I'm so excited to be here. It's such an honor to have my podcast remade. I'm an education consultant by trade, and I started Empowerment Junction for the sole purpose of igniting curiosity and really sharing my passion for learning. And my podcast has been going for the past year. I'm now working on my season 2, and I wanted to pause to see what else I can bring to my audience. I've been very inspired by the number of listeners that have tuned into my podcast. And this has really motivated me to really want to make the podcast a bit more better, give it a bit more oomph to really get more audience and really continue to engage with the community and with the listeners that are brought into the show. So I'm really, really honored to have this opportunity. Thank you so much, everybody. And I'm based in Manchester, England. Just wanted to add that.
Manchester, England. Excellent. I was just about to ask. But
Thank you.
Excellent. So, as you said, the podcast is called Empowerment Junction. Before we dive into the makeover, I just want everyone to hear a little bit about the show. So we prepared a quick video. So let's take a look at where it stands right now.
Hey, my name is Olivia.
Meet Olivia Bussey.
And I hope you're doing well.
She's an educator turned corporate leader, coach, and mentor who spent her career empowering others to break through the barriers holding them back. Olivia spent 18 years in education, mentoring young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. Many of them believed that there was a ceiling that would keep them from achieving, a belief Olivia soon confronted in her own career. Because after transitioning into the corporate world, Olivia herself faced some of these same barriers. This led her to create Empowerment Junction, a podcast to demonstrate her leadership skills and empower other women to push through the very same obstacles. Each week, Olivia's podcast sparks curiosity, ignites personal growth, and offers actionable tips to help listeners break through glass ceilings and achieve their goals. Olivia's goal is clear: to empower women just like her to take control of their journey and reach their full potential.
From overcoming challenges to boosting confidence and finding your true calling, our podcast covers it all.
And the podcast has an added goal: demonstrate Olivia's leadership skills to further her position as a motivator and coach.
I had a question from a client about embracing the lessons of failure.
But as of right now, the podcast isn't achieving all that Olivia had hoped. the audience has plateaued, and growth is feeling impossible. Olivia has the ideas for content, but she needs the help of real podcast professionals to take this podcast to the next level. And that's where we come in. We've assembled a team of podcast experts to help Olivia elevate her show and start generating real results. All right. Can't wait to dig into it. But just before we do, Olivia, I would love to hear, where do you want the podcast to go in the future? And what are your goals for the podcast?
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Andrew. And what an introduction. I'd sort of missed some of the things I've done in life. I think when people present them to you, they look so different and so inspiring. Thank you for that. Really, really humbling to see some of the things I've done and I'd forgotten about, because you get so consumed with your own sort of area. But so the podcast currently has been mainly around motivational strategies and really empowering, as you say, particularly women within certain contexts and women who particularly are struggling to reach the next breakthrough or their next level of success. And really the idea was to turn that into something tangible, something that they can see at the end of it, and really work on a goal that I can use my own experiences to inspire them. Because my background is in education, I very much felt that there was a lack of certain types of women within certain sectors. And I wanted to step away from that and really use my own experiences and build that into a podcast to help certain women and even not just women, certain minorities really understand if perhaps maybe there's something else they're lacking. There was a little bit around my faith as a Christian. I felt that I really need to pull that through to the podcast, because I felt that sometimes when you do your spiritual work, it really links into the physical element, and I wanted to translate that into the podcast. So currently, I've had audiences, and those have been people I've known, people I've worked with, and some of them had challenges in the workplaces. So they've been really nice to me and tuning in. But you need more. You need you need to work with the community. And my really aim is to engage the community, engage those who really are perhaps at a pedestal that maybe I just want to hear a little bit more about them. I wanted to bring in some podcast people who own podcasts. So I wanted to bring in other speakers, but I just didn't feel it was the right time to bring in speakers. I wanted to offer my own view. But on season 2, I wanted to see if I could really get a few speakers to come in and demonstrate exactly how they got to that stage. But I was also very cautious in terms of who to bring in, because some of them were, obviously I've worked with them and they felt a little bit more shy, or they didn't want to bring in their perspective because they were still very cautious in the work environment. But I wanted
Olivia, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut you off there. That's a commendable list of goals, and I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is going to touch on those things. But I just want to make sure that we have time for all of it. So let's dive in. First, we're going to address one of the most important parts of any podcast, the sound. So to help us with that, we've brought in Alex Bennett, host of Post-Production at Lower Street. We often call Alex our audio wizard. It's not just because of his beard, but because what he does in Pro Tools is actual magic to me. So Alex has come prepared to make Empowerment Junction sound incredible. Alex, over to you.
Hello, Andrew. Hi, Olivia. How's it going?
Hi, Alex. Thanks so much. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. So I've listened to your podcast and I really like the energy that you bring as a host, but I won't get too much into content because it's not my area of expertise. I'll leave that to Erin in just a minute. My area of focus is recording, editing, and sound design. And I think there are a few things we can do to take the audio quality of your podcast up a notch. And I think we should start at the beginning with the recordings. And it looks like you've been recording in a bedroom. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, which is exactly the sort of place you should be recording. There's lots of soft furnishings. It tends to sound a bit better in there. But there are some hard surfaces. I can see the windows, I think, and
right
the wardrobe.
By the window.
Yeah. And so have you noticed a little bit of echo roominess in your recordings?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd call this reverb, and it's a really common issue. And even when you're recording in a bedroom, there's lots of things that can be done to reduce that. So I've got 3 setups for you. The first of which I'm going to call the Try Hard, which is my current setup, where I've built acoustic panels and treated the room to make it sound less roomy when I'm presenting. The second I would call the Old Hand, which was made famous recently by Ira Glass, which is where you sit as close to your clothes as possible and make yourself a makeshift recording studio. And the third one is probably the most reliable and one that I use myself all the time, which is the Pillow Fort. It looks odd, and in the summer it can get really hot, but the recordings you get from under the duvet are usually excellent. Which of these do you think you'd most like to have a go at?
I think just to be a little bit more conservative, I'll go for the Old Hand.
Yeah. So I have a cupboard setup of my own to share, which I don't know if it's the same cupboard, but it looks like a similar cupboard to the one you have.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I found that I could get a whole chair in there, I could get a duvet in there and have my own little recording studio, and you don't feel as though you're not stuck under a duvet. I think the quality of recordings you get out of a setup like this are really, really excellent.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the tech you'll use to do these recordings. So first up is headphones. It looks like you're currently using a pair of Philips headphones.
I do. Yes, I do.
And we have some alternative recommendations here. The first one is a pair of Bear Dynamic DT770 Pros. And don't worry, for all the tech recommendations I'm making, we'll send you links and information and everything after the fact, so you can browse through at your leisure. I love these headphones. It's actually the pair I'm wearing right now. I've worn them for up to 12 hours at a time, and they're never uncomfortable. They have these wonderful foam ear cups. It's amazing. A second recommendation is the ubiquitous Sony MDR7506s, which I also have here. What I like about these is that they fold up into a tiny little ball, and they're very portable. And then, if you'd rather have in-ear monitors, the Shure SE215s are a great option. You get really good audio quality, and maybe if you're planning on appearing on video in the future and you don't want to appear on video with headphones, this is a great direction to go in. Let's talk about recording as well. So this is the microphone we'd recommend. It's the Shure MV7X. You can buy it in a bundle with an arm, which I think you currently have an arm in your recording setup.
I do, yes.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
I love them. It's so great. And we would use this with the headphones, one of the pairs of headphones we recommended, and a Focusrite Scarlett Solo, long name, interface. This would mean that all of this can just plug directly into your laptop. It should be fairly simple to set up. We've used this setup ourselves multiple times, and it creates really, really nice recordings. Does this seem doable?
Absolutely. I think obviously it comes to the price element for me majority of the time. I want to keep it as cost effective as possible. And that's why perhaps I haven't invested in high tech stuff. But
yeah, these are all, I'd say they're all entry level. They won't break the bank.
Okay.
And I've built up a similar collection myself, kind of £50 at a time, £100 at a time, just kind of chipping away at it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the theme music. So I think we have a clip of your current theme music.
You do.
For those who just joined in, my name is Olivia Bassi, and I'm the host of Empowerment Junction podcast.
So how did you come across this theme
Royalty-free music.
Yeah.
And I found it. Obviously, I do want to take. I'm very cautious in terms of IP protection rights. So I do want to take something that someone's going to come and claim it's theirs. So I just went with royalty-free music.
Yeah, royalty-free's the way to go.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of licenses we get for a lot of the music we use as well. So we've taken that original theme tune into account and the intended audience of your podcast and your own style as a presenter. And we have made a piece of music for you to use as your theme tune with our in-house composer, Alex Rose. And I'd love to play that for you now.
Yes, please. Wow.
What do you think?
I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. So I'm thinking, wow, it's very engaging. And I think that's it. And I think I can see my voice blending really well with it if I was to do a voiceover on the music. So that's really, really good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Is this part of the royalty-free music that's...
This is yours for free to use as you see fit. It's all yours.
Fantastic. Oh, wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just off screen, just vibing out to that. I really like that music.
I feel it as well, Andrew. I feel it.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. Just time-wise, we're going to move right along. Now that we've got the audio quality sorted, we're going to move into the heart of your podcast, the content, because it can sound as the best podcast in the world, but listeners won't stick around unless they're interested in what you're actually saying. And that's where our executive producer and creative mastermind, Erin MacIndoe Sproule, comes in. Get in here, Erin.
Here I am. Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Andrew. Thank you so much, Olivia, for doing this with us. It was such a pleasure to get to look at your podcast. You're obviously so passionate about the content that you're sharing. And that is, for me, always, the thing that excites me most about getting to work with people is when they're really passionate about the stories that they're sharing. So we have some tips that we want to share, similar to what Alex did with the content. So I'm going to dive right into it. So for the purposes of today's kind of exercise, we're going to use one specific episode as kind of the main kind of thing that we'll look at. And that episode is Break Free from Autopilot, 6 Practical Ways for Mindful Living. So that was the one that we kind of looked at as the example. And we're going to play some clips so that you out there, audience, can also listen a little bit to Olivia's content. So the first thing that we want to suggest, the first tip that we have for your show, is to keep your episodes tight and to focus your content. So in this first episode about or in this episode that we looked at about autopilot, you talk about a lot of different things. There's, stuff about autopilot, but there's also content about goal setting and vision boards and doing a digital detox and mindfulness. So you cover a lot of ground. So I just want to play a clip quickly, I think, to kind of show an example of that.
How do I switch off autopilot and live more fully in the moment? Be aware of how you use digital communication when you're looking at the things that you've been putting off. It's very important to self-examine. Now, shifting from autopilot to mindful living, and that's what we are going to try and do today. I love the Buddha's simple definition of enlightenment as the end of suffering.
So those were some examples of different things that we kind of touch upon throughout the episode. So our first recommendation is to choose something very specific and hone in on that really deeply. And honestly, I don't know if anyone who I've worked with is in the audience, but I probably sound like a broken record, because that is honestly like the number one thing that I think we, especially in the early processes of coming up with podcasts, tend to just talk about with clients, is just really getting specific about your topics for every episode. What is the question that this episode is answering for your audience, and really focusing on depth over breadth. We think that is really important. I like to think of it as kind of your podcast is like a hike through the woods, and you might see like other paths that you could kind of go down, and you can be like, hey, there's this other thing over here, and hey, this other thing over here. but not going too down that path, just sticking on the path that you kind of have. So that is our first tip. Now, our other tip as part of this is your podcasts kind of have different lengths, but I'd say the average kind of seems to be around that 45-minute mark. We would recommend a tight 15 minutes. I don't know how you feel about that, but
I do love to talk, especially when it's such a topic. So yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes so much sense when you say that. I think, yes, sometimes I do waffle along. So I've been concise and really keeping to the theme of that session is quite important. I think that's, and it's really good you flagged it. Thank you.
Awesome. I love that. Well, yeah. So 15 minutes and really tight in one topic. And then so you can have a 15-minute episode about autopilot. You can have a 15-minute episode about digital detox, 15-minute episode about something else. So you can just really get tight with that content. So tip number 2, hook your audience. So the first 30 seconds of your podcast are so important. So I think that when people are looking for new content, they're not typically kind of looking around and being like, oh, I want to listen to a podcast or about empowerment, something that might help me meet my goals. Oh, here's like a 45-minute podcast. I'm going to just test that out and listen to the whole thing. From all of us who have looked for podcasts in our lives, which I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, you tend to kind of look through and just listen to like a snippet. So that first little snippet piece is so, so important. So in your, so let's just listen to the first 15 seconds of that autopilot episode.
Being creatures of habit, many people live their lives on autopilot. But sometimes you need to turn off your internal route plotter and be fully in the moment.
So what you do here is actually pretty good in that you're stating very clearly what the episode is about. And if you take our first tip and kind of hone in that content, something like this can be pretty effective. But then we go into some other stuff over the course of the next 2 minutes. And I'm just going to play another clip you're talking about what happened on last week's episode.
Last week, I shared an audio of Martin Luther King Jr.'s powerful speech, A Drumbeat for Justice.
And then I'm just going to breeze over, not play the clips of what else kind of happens in the next in those 2 minutes. So then you have a clip where you talk about all of you're sending out love to all of the people who have had birthdays in October, which is like a really, really nice moment. But it's not until around the 2-minute mark that you get into what I would call the heart of the episode. And you even kind of, you say something like, okay, let's get into the episode now. So we'd recommend putting that up a lot further. So we have a couple of ideas for what you could do for that kind of beginning of the episode. And I won't play clips here, but we're just going to talk about them. So one of the things that we talked about was in the episode, you have this great personal story about someone cutting you off and you get really animated. You're like, I was so angry, da, 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 but I was just like totally on autopilot. Start with something like that, because it just immediately allows people to have that emotional connection to the topic that you're talking about. So that's one potential. We thought of another kind of fun segment that we thought would work really well for your show too, which is to start each episode with an interactive mindfulness kind of meditation. So you have a moment in the episode where you talk about eating a banana and you're like, I was eating the banana. I was noticing all the flavors. And it was like, so, it just really helped me to get out of autopilot. So you could actually get your audience to do something like that with you. Go get a raisin and let's just like eat it together. Podcasting gives you this really amazing opportunity to kind of have that very personal connection with your audience. So moving on to tip number 3. structuring the episode. So I'm going to breeze through this pretty quickly, and it kind of just builds on, what we were talking about in the last section. We recommend having a format that you can use for each episode and kind of repeat it. It will help you to sort of structure your ideas, and it will also help the audience to kind of know, similar to that hike analogy I made earlier, it'll let them know kind of the path that they're going to take in each episode. So we recommend starting with a segment that is this mindfulness meditation that we talked about. Then we go into Act 1, the personal story or anecdote. Oh my God, I love these hearts. Please keep them coming. So getting into that personal story and that emotional heart of what you're talking about. Then we get into an Act 2, which is resources, quotes, research. This is where you get kind of deeper into that topic and, really start to bring in some other perspectives. Act 3, leaving your audience with some tangible tips. And this is something that you actually do really well already in the podcast. So we recommend you just honing in a second on that. And then we had an idea for an outro section, kind of similar to the 1-minute meditation. That's an interactive segment where listeners, you ask them to do something in between this episode and the next one. So for example, you talk a lot about goal setting. So you could ask your listeners, hey, what's something you can do for 5 minutes this week to get you closer to your goals? Or, hey, when you're brushing your teeth this week, try to be really, really mindful and not be on autopilot as you're doing it. And then you can also get your audience to respond to you about how those exercises went for them, in the reviews, or they can send you emails. And that is a perfect segue into Hannah, who's going to jump in and tell you a bit about what she thinks you can do to grow your audience.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you, Olivia.
And just to give a quick intro to Hannah, Hannah Southern is our head of audience development and a real life superhero. She's going to talk about expanding your reach, attracting the right listeners, increasing engagement, keeping them coming back for more. Hannah, take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, Olivia. I'm so excited to be part of your Extreme Podcast Makeover. So from an audience development perspective, the first piece of advice we're going to start on is the distribution strategy. So looking back at season 1 and the content you released last year, I know you were kind of releasing between 1 and 2 episodes per month, which is a really good amount of content. I think for season 2 and moving forward, we would recommend kind of picking an exact date and time, each kind of a regular time every kind of month when you release the episode. So having a predictable release schedule that your audience know kind of when it's coming in into their podcast app. And we were thinking here for season 2, a good kind of cadence for you would be bi-weekly, just so it gives you time to kind of promote the podcast episode in between. And because you're producing the content yourself, it gives you time to kind of come up with the next episode and make it kind of timely as well. And I always think a really good day for a kind of self-improvement, inspirational podcast is on a Monday, because that's when I kind of listen to my self-improvement podcast, because it kind of sets you up for the week. And it just gives you a kickstart into a good week. How does that sound?
Sounds really, really good. And it's something that I've always thought I need to do, but it's just, life catches up and
totally.
I know I'm definitely working to that plan. Thank you. I think just hearing this sort of little tips is really, really helpful in many ways, and really gives me a good idea where to gauge this on my next season.
Love it. Cool. So now we've talked about distribution strategy. We're going to talk a little bit about growth. So one of the best ways that we think, to grow a podcast, that we found growing a podcast is having using other shows that have kind of similar themes and topics and promoting your podcast on their shows. So there's 2 ways that we're going to talk about today. So you can see the example on screen is feed drops. So this is when you swap kind of snippets or full episodes with another podcast that has kind of similar themes or topics that that would be kind of like almost a gift to your audience. So when you're doing this with other podcasts, it's really important to kind of research into their podcast, see what their audience likes. You could even speak to the creator, be like, what's kind of your most popular kind of topics, and then pick an episode there and drop it in the feed, and they can do the same with you. And then it is like a really good gift to each other's audience. And then another one, we can move on to the next screen. Oh, I don't know if we had this. Oh yeah, is promo swaps. So this is when you kind of swap, you work with another podcast, again, with a similar audience and subject matter, where you swap kind of a 30-second or 1-minute ad in each other's podcasts. Now, I always recommend kind of doing this over a longer period of time. So kind of having it across maybe a good few episodes, so maybe 3 episodes, just so you can kind of nurture your audience, and that audience can see, sorry, 2 seconds. Sorry about that. So the audience can kind of, you nurture that audience in that partnership as well. So have you heard any adverts for podcasts on the shows that you listen to, Olivia?
I have, yes, I have had, Jay Shetty's podcast and
Yes.
Trevor Noah, I think. Yeah, I've had some, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, usually it's like a podcast is often few and far between the BetterHelp and the mattress ads, but it's always good when you hear another podcast from another podcast. I love it. So on the next screen, we're going to see so 3 podcasts where I know you listen to Jay Shetty already, but those are the kind of podcasts where we know that you have kind of similar crossover audiences, and you can, you have crossover audiences, and it's worth just reaching out to the kind of creators and seeing if you can collaborate in some way. And that kind of collaboration might come in lots of different forms, whether it's kind of a shout out on social media, a host read ad, a feed drop like we've mentioned, or a kind of promo swap with ads as well. So it's definitely worth reaching out to creators with similar topics as well. Amazing. So looking beyond kind of podcast growth, another recommendations for kind of audience development is kind of, we always recommend kind of deepening your engagement with your listeners. And I know that Empowerment Junction has a community around it already, the people you've worked with your listeners already, you're getting really great feedback too. So it's important that you kind of build a stronger relationship with your audience in some ways. So one of the ways you could do this is by kind of doing some community engagement on kind of social media. And one of the ways we have talked about, which on the next slide is an example of this, is you could do a book club. I know you have lots of amazing resources that you use to kind of formulate your episodes as well. So this could be a really great way to kind of connect with your listeners on social media too. So this is an example from a podcast, Here for the Crack. They do lots of kind of self-improvement stuff for kind of the Gen Z generation, but they have a book kind of club as well attached to it, which could be another way to kind of, engage with your audience, see what they thought of the book, and kind of build episodes around those topics too within, the period of time. How does that sound? Does that sound...
It sounds really good. I think for me, what might be become perhaps maybe not even a problem, but I think it might just be my own timing. It's just how to fit all of this into the schedule of recording and making sure that I get it in time. And I think that's the only issue I can see from our side, not your side, but it sounds really, really good. It's
100%. It's always like you look at some of the podcasts in the space that have like teams of hundreds of people on, and you're like, why can't I have that?
Yeah.
But there we go.
The one-man shop.
Amazing. So for the moment we've been waiting for, the exciting part is the artwork. So we have been working with the agency Good Tape to come to look at your current artwork, and working with Good Tape to kind of listen to the show, listen to kind of what the podcast is all about, and then we use the kind of then we've created 3 alternative designs for you. So we're going to show you those now.
Exciting.
Amazing.
Oh, wow.
Is there any one of these 3 that you are drawn to? And I'd love to hear from the chat. Is there anyone in the chat? What's the chat favorite too?
I like my face in it. I don't know why. So it's either between the first and the second. I don't mind the hands one, but I don't know. I think I might be drawn to the second because of the color, just to keep in theme with my previous theme color. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe the audience can help me.
I'm seeing like we'll have to do a count like a count at the end. I'm seeing lots of different answers here, but I'm with you. I really like the middle one because I do think it's quite similar to your initial design too, especially with the color. And I like having, you like having your picture in it. There's 3 of you in here, so even better.
Even better. Yes, it looks fantastic.
Amazing. Well, and without further ado, I think there's one more slide here, and I'm going to just from me, and this is to everyone in the audience. You need to subscribe to Olivia's podcast, Empowerment Junction, and you need to follow her journey and see what she does with all this advice. And I'll hand back over to Andrew.
Thank you, Hannah. Incredible. I personally like artwork number 2. We've reached the end of our fireworks. Very fitting. But we've reached the end of our Extreme Podcast Makeover. You just received a ton of info. We'll be sending that to you, and that artwork and that music is yours to have, Olivia. Our gift to you as a thank you for participating and putting yourself out there. And I hope that this also gives you kind of a renewed excitement for the podcast. Clearly, you are doing amazing work, and your show is really great. And some of the stuff around the edges will really help boost you and get more people to listen to it, because it's an amazing show and you're an amazing person.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you so much, everybody who's worked on really getting me to this level. It's honestly such an honor since I met Lower Street last year. And this year, I've been transformed from the many gifts I keep getting from you guys. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our 3 podcast masterminds as well. Alex Bennett, Erin MacIndoe Sproule, and Hannah Southern. And thank you to everyone watching. It's been awesome to be a part of this session. We've got lots more coming up, don't forget. So stay tuned for more. And welcome to the Brand Podcast Summit. Thanks for participating in our mid-2000s Extreme Makeover realness. We love you.
Thank you.